Destruction doesn't always announce itself with smoke and shouting. Sometimes it arrives quietly, not because it's hidden, but because it's precise. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this. The clearest way to ruin someone is rarely to attack them. It's to let them destroy themselves while you stand still and watch the pattern fold. Think about how most people fight. Someone insults you, undermines you, or tries to humiliate you in public, and instinctually you react. Words, heat, a messy defense. You rush to explain, to justify, to prove you're not the thing they say you are. You enter their game. That's the mistake. Reaction hands them the narrative. Reaction hands them power. The alternative is almost always quieter. Refuse to react. This isn't passivity. It's a deliberate tactic. When someone expects noise and you give them silence, you create a vacuum. People hate vacuums. They fill them with sound, with movement, with explanation. The more they try to prove themselves, the more they expose their desperation. The moment they start explaining, they begin to look guilty. The moment they beg for attention, they reveal how hollow their violence is. So the first rule is simple: stillness. Stillness is a form of dominance. It disarms provocation. When someone throws a jab at you and you do nothing, not a blink, not a flinch, you are starving the offensive oxygen. Let the silence sit a beat too long. Look at them calmly, then change the subject, walk away, or speak to someone else. You've reframed the room. The would-be attacker expected a fight. You offered a non-event. You sent a message. You are not important enough to disturb my peace. People will feel something shift even if they can't name it. Crowds judge by feeling more than by logic. They will sense the imbalance and start to mirror it. The instigator gets louder, starts over-explaining, repeats points, grows frantic. The louder they get, the smaller they become. Because power in public is about perceived control. Whoever looks most composed looks like the victor, even if nothing dramatic happened. That leads to the second layer. Weaponize their need for attention. Most attackers don't want to defeat you. They want to control the narrative. They crave reaction. So don't give them one. Withdraw your attention, your energy, your access. Remove the channels they rely on. Don't send a statement. Don't publicly denounce them. Quietly exclude them from conversations. Stop sharing key information and watch them try to climb back into your orbit. Nobody can spin effectively when everyone stops listening. Subtraction is a brutal but elegant move. It's not about public spectacle. It's administrative. You don't announce you're cutting someone off. You simply stop inviting them, stop confiding in them, stop handing them social oxygen. The result is panic. People repeat themselves, increase volume, make foolish promises. Their attempts to matter become performative and obvious. And the crowd, which always prefers the calmer face, slowly starts to reinterpret what they witnessed. The attacker becomes the one trying to cling to relevance, not the person who successfully diminished you. Contrast is the third weapon. You don't need to argue to discredit someone. Live in a way that contradicts their slander. If they call you unstable, be composed. If they say you're incompetent, deliver precise results. If they claim you're manipulative, be transparent and consistent in public. Don't defend, demonstrate. By being the living antithesis of their accusations, you force observers to compare timeline and behavior. The storyteller loses credibility because their story no longer fits the evidence in front of everyone's eyes. This whole system relies on two truths. Attention is leverage, and people project meaning into silence. When you refuse to engage, you let the other person fill the silence with their own weakness. When you keep building, creating, and showing up productively, you become the proof that their attacks were empty. They wanted to drag you down. Instead, they exposed how much they needed your spotlight to matter. So your short playbook for the opening moves. When attacked, don't react. Hold still. Let silence do the work. Withdraw access quietly. No announcements, no drama. And keep showing up where it counts, calmly and effectively. Let your life be the rebuttal. This is destruction without attack, surgical, psychological, and public, in effect, but private in process. It's not about cruelty. It's about refusal, the refusal to be used as someone else's ladder. And once you master that refusal, you force opponents to become the spectacle. Their unraveling is your elevation. Now let's go deeper, because not every attack happens on stage. Some of the most dangerous blows come quiet and private. Whispers, smiles, sly lies told between meetings, rumors slipped into ears. These are designed to erode you slowly. They aim for the small spaces where your reputation and relationships live. Most people panic when this happens. They try to correct every rumor, to explain themselves to every whispering ear. That's exactly what the whisperer wants: validation, attention, the chance to keep the conversation alive. Machiavelli would have laughed at that strategy. The correct move is subtle and deliberate. Don't fight the whisperer with words. Fight them with presence. Visibility disarms whispers. When rumors are trying to take root in private conversations, uproot them with consistency in public. Show up, perform, and demonstrate the reality that contradicts the rumor. Speak clearly in the meetings where those whispers were started. Deliver undeniable results. Let your competence and composure be the counterweight to the narrative they're trying to build. You're not addressing the rumor. You're outclassing it. The difference matters. If you respond to every private slight, you amplify the story. If you instead make the truth visible, the story loses power because it no longer matches the facts people can observe. Observers will always compare rumor to reality. If your presence and work don't match the accusation, people will ask why the storyteller is so obsessed with you. Over time, that question becomes suspicion about the storyteller's motives. The whisperer begins to look petty, jealous, or untrustworthy. There's another pattern to watch for: imitation. Some enemies won't openly attack. They'll copy you. They'll mimic your moves, talk in your language, replicate your network. Intimidating? Maybe. Annoying? Definitely. Dangerous? Not really, and here's why. Imitation is admission. If someone copies you, they admit your model works better than theirs. Machiavelli would say that imitators are trapped by the thing they're copying. They can never become the original. The right answer to imitators is speed and evolution. Don't get stuck defending what you already did. Accelerate, improve, pivot. Make your next move unpredictable so their imitation becomes chasing, not matching. Think of it like this. You build a footprint, and they step into it. You leave that footprint and create a new one somewhere else. The imitator is always playing catch-up. When you consistently out-innovate and outthink, they eventually look like an echo, loud, but empty. Then there are the proud, the ones who underestimate you because they believe themselves untouchable. They look down. They sneer. They assume you're a temporary nuisance. These are the easiest to dismantle and the most satisfying, because pride collapses under comparison. You don't attack their throne. You build a better one nearby. Quietly, methodically, you do the work that wins attention in the long run. You don't crash their party. You host a better one. When people begin to notice, when applause shifts eyes toward you, the proud man or woman experiences a horror they weren't prepared for. Indifference, No shout, no scandal, just the slow dying of relevance. One of the cruelest lessons in all of this is how simple it is. The person who needs the spotlight is easy to control. Attention is currency. If you stop paying it, you bankrupt them. And once someone becomes bankrupt of attention, they start taking desperate measures, louder claims, bolder accusations, public stunts. The spectacle gets more extreme, and, as it does, the crowd grows bored or sympathetic to the person being targeted. Because people instinctively resettle around composure and value. If you remain composed and valuable, the crowd will follow you. This is why consistency matters more than a single dramatic rebuttal. The world rewards the person who shows up and does the work without drama. A rumor dies when the truth is persistent. A loud mouth deflates when another voice remains calm for long enough. An imitator fades when the origin keeps moving. A proud rival collapses when outperformed not by gossip, but by output. There's a point beyond all tactics, mastery of indifference. Not the cruel kind, the strategic kind. Indifference used as a tool looks like selective energy. You choose where you invest attention and where you withdraw it. That choice is power. It's easy to waste power by reacting constantly to slights, trying to correct every misperception. It's harder and far more effective to allocate attention like capital. Invest in your projects, your allies, your presence. Divest from petty conflicts and energy drainers. So, what does a day in the life of someone who uses these Machiavellian principles look like? It's mundane, actually. It's waking up, doing the work, making strategic decisions about access and exposure, and keeping an internal temperature low. It's refusing to gossip, refusing to perform outrage, and instead building the kind of presence that renders gossip irrelevant. It's operating as if your time and audience are the scarcest resources because they are. You will see the benefits quickly in how people behave. The instigator grows louder but narrower, whispers slow and become fewer. Imitators fall behind. Proud rivals look flustered. And you move in rooms where people don't try to trip you. Doors that were once closed begin to open for you naturally. That's the payoff for choosing silence, subtraction, and excellence over reaction. Machiavelli wasn't romantic about power, he was practical. These aren't virtues to be admired in principle alone. They are tools that produce results. Use them with restraint, with ethics that suit you, and with the understanding that real control is quieter than most people think. Mastery of attention is mastery of influence. And influence, not volume, is how you reshape the world around you without ever throwing a single punch. Let's go further because Machiavellian destruction doesn't end with silence or stillness. It evolves into something even sharper, control of the frame. This is where most people fail, because they keep fighting battles instead of owning perception. A battle is emotional, temporary, and noisy. A frame is psychological, stable, and invisible. And whoever controls the frame controls how reality is interpreted. Here's the truth. The moment you react, you lose the frame. If someone mocks you and you defend yourself, they just pulled you into their world. If someone slanders you and you rush to explain, they've already set the context. You're now the accused. Even if you win, you fought inside their story. Machiavelli's genius was that he never let his enemies define the field. He didn't play inside their frame. He built his own. So what does that look like for you? It means you stop treating attacks like events and start treating them like opportunities. When someone talks about you, you remain unshaken, calm posture, steady voice, maybe even a hint of boredom. You don't try to correct. You let their aggression contrast against your composure. That contrast rewires the audience's perception. Suddenly, you're not the victim of an attack. You're the stable center of chaos. You've become the authority simply by not breaking rhythm. It's subtle, but it's powerful. Because in the court of perception, whoever looks least in control loses, even if their argument is perfect. The moment your opponent looks desperate, emotional, or frantic, the audience silently transfers power to you. You didn't earn it by logic. You earned it by presence. That's the essence of Machiavellian warfare. Make your enemy fight themselves in public. Give them space. Give them rope. Let them keep talking. The more they try to convince others, the more transparent their insecurity becomes. The harder they push, the weaker they appear. Because no one who truly holds power needs to prove it. And when that public collapse happens, when they've exposed themselves, you don't celebrate. You don't even comment. You simply move forward. You stay visible, poised, productive. The silence around their name becomes deafening. People start to notice that you're growing while they're fading. The comparison does the work for you. Now, what about the whisperers who try to erode you from the shadows? The quiet manipulators who act friendly to your face but plant seeds of doubt in private? Machiavelli's solution was merciless in its elegance. Don't defend yourself. Outperform the rumor. When someone frames your success as arrogance, you stay generous. When they call your intentions manipulative, you remain transparent. When they describe your wins as luck, you show up again and again with results that can't be denied. You're not arguing, you're building evidence. The observers, not your enemies, become the judge. And when the story they've heard no longer matches the reality they see, they quietly switch allegiance. That's the collapse. Every rumor, every smear, every whisper becomes a boomerang when you keep performing with calm precision. The very contrast between their claims and your behavior becomes the trap they set for themselves. And you never had to lift a sword. Just keep walking. But this method also requires restraint. The hardest part is not reacting when you know you could destroy someone with a single sentence. You'll feel the temptation, the desire to expose them, to prove the truth, to drop evidence that would silence them instantly. But that's a trap too. Because the moment you engage, you become part of their story again. Silence, on the other hand, makes them narrate into a void, and the void echoes back doubt. Remember this: every time your enemy says your name and you say nothing, their words echo louder, thinner, weaker. People begin to wonder, why do they keep talking about someone who doesn't even acknowledge them? That's the seed of decay. Doubt spreads. Credibility rots. And once their image begins to crumble, you strike not with aggression, but with contrast. You show up dressed sharply, speaking calmly, delivering value, unbothered, composed. They rant. You reason. They obsess. You ascend. Without you saying a single word, the gap widens until everyone can see it. They tried to damage you, but ended up proving your significance. They tried to destroy your image, but in the process revealed how dependent they were on it. That's the art of destruction without attack. You turn their obsession into evidence. You become the proof that they can't reach your level, can't match your poise, can't survive your silence. And then, when the noise finally dies down, you don't celebrate their fall. You transcend it. Because the moment you gloat, you make the collapse about revenge. But when you move forward quietly, new projects, new rooms, new alliances, you transform the story itself. It's no longer you versus them. It's you versus who you were before. That's the point where destruction becomes transformation. You've not only won, you've evolved. And nothing terrifies your enemies more than realizing you never needed them for your rise. Because power, real power, doesn't roar. It whispers. It watches. And when it finally moves, it's already over. Now, there's one final layer most people never even recognize until it's too late, the psychological collapse that happens after you've already won. Machiavelli called it destruction through irrelevance. It's not physical, it's not even reputational, it's existential. You don't just defeat your enemy, you make them unnecessary. Here's how it works. Once someone has exhausted themselves trying to harm you, talking, imitating, undermining, spreading rumors, you take away the one thing they still crave: acknowledgement. You stop speaking of them as if they ever mattered. You don't call them your rival. You don't even speak of a conflict. You reduce the event to a memory, and then to nothing. When someone brings them up, you respond with quiet indifference. I haven't thought about them in a while. Hope they're doing okay. Not sure what they're up to. Say it calmly, even kindly, but without emotion. Because nothing wounds the prideful more than realizing they no longer even occupy your mind. That's the Machiavellian masterstroke, turning your enemy into a non-issue. You're not forgiving them. You're erasing them. And when the world sees that, the humiliation is total. Because in the social game of dominance, being hated still means you matter. Being ignored means you don't. Think about that for a second. The proud crave applause. The envious crave reaction. The imitator craves validation. But when none of those are available, they implode. Their identity, once built around your name, starts to collapse under its own emptiness. People stop asking what happened between you two. They stop mentioning the conflict entirely. The silence becomes the burial ground. And that's the real victory, when the person who once tried to destroy you is no longer even relevant to the conversation. They thought they were your antagonist. It turns out they were just an extra in your story. But here's what separates true power from pettiness. You don't broadcast that you've won. You disappear from the fight entirely. You rise so far above it that the battlefield itself becomes invisible. You move into new rooms, new projects, new levels of life that your old enemy can't even enter. They can't follow, can't imitate, can't compete, because you're not playing the same game anymore. Machiavelli taught that the most feared people weren't those who retaliated. They were the ones you offended once and never got another chance with. They didn't slam the door, they just stopped opening it. Their absence became the punishment. That's your final weapon, exclusion without announcement. You don't send messages. You become the message. You show up among people who've never even heard of your rival. You're not escaping, you're upgrading. And when your old enemy finally realizes they can't access you anymore, that you exist in a world beyond their reach, something inside them breaks. They'll talk about you as if you still share the same field, but the truth is you've outgrown it. You've changed the category. They're fighting for status. You're building legacy. They're chasing image. You're creating impact. They're trying to be louder. You're being remembered. It's not about pride. It's evolution. You no longer measure yourself by the noise of your opposition. Your focus has shifted from winning to building. That's when destruction transforms into transcendence. Because while they're still playing for attention, you're playing for time. You've turned their attack into fuel, letting it refine you, sharpen you, clarify what actually deserves your energy. Machiavelli's final principle was this: the most devastating revenge is progress. When your enemies realize that their attempts to stop you were the very thing that made you stronger, it ruins them from the inside out. You didn't defeat them with aggression. You made them irrelevant through growth. And once that silence takes over, that vast, echoing stillness around their name, everyone feels it. The audience that once watched the conflict realizes one thing: the only person still fighting is the one who already lost. That's how destruction becomes art. Not fire and fury, but silence and distance. Not vengeance, but transcendence. You ascend so quietly that your enemy begins to question if the war even happened. And when they do, when they look back and realize that your only real weapon was composure, that's when the lesson lands hardest. They didn't lose because you were cruel. They lost because you stopped playing. And that's the cruelest victory of all, to make someone who tried to destroy you wonder if they ever mattered enough to begin with. Because when power is real, it doesn't shout. It simply moves on. Here's the truth that Machiavelli understood better than anyone. Destruction isn't always about what you do to someone. Sometimes it's about what you stop doing. You stop reacting. You stop explaining. You stop giving them your time, your energy, your presence. And in that absence, they suffocate. This is where power becomes quiet, almost invisible. It's not a storm anymore. It's the air itself. When you master silence, people feel it. They sense it in how you carry yourself, how you respond, or more importantly, how you don't. Silence, when used with intention, isn't weakness. It's dominion. It's the final stage of control. Think about the psychology of an enemy. They feed on acknowledgement. They need to know they've gotten under your skin. That's their oxygen. Take that away, and they're left talking to themselves, replaying old conflicts, inventing new narratives, convincing others that the war still exists. Meanwhile, you've already moved on to something higher. You've become a different person, one who no longer even belongs to that chapter. And here's what makes this so devastating. To your enemy, your silence feels like exile. It's not just that you ignored them. It's that you left them behind in a world that no longer includes you. You've moved into a new psychological altitude, and they can't breathe there. This is Machiavelli's final movement, the silent crescendo. You disappear, not because you lost, but because you've already won so completely that the fight no longer exists in your reality. The enemy's need for validation becomes their prison. Their obsession becomes their undoing. And the people who once watched the conflict, they see it too. They see one person spiraling, ranting, posting, gossiping, and another quietly advancing, building, growing. No defenses, no drama, just results. Without saying a word, you've shifted the frame of power entirely. You're no longer the target. You're the standard. You've become the figure they define themselves against. And that's how you win permanently, by making your enemy's entire identity revolve around your existence, while you've already transcended theirs. Machiavelli's brilliance was this. He knew that the most complete destruction wasn't about breaking a man's reputation. It was about breaking his sense of importance. When your enemy realizes that they no longer even play a role in your world, it doesn't just wound them, it erases them. But remember, this isn't about cruelty. It's about efficiency. Power wastes nothing. Even the attacks against you become energy. You recycle them into wisdom, patience, and focus. You let them teach you restraint, because when you learn to stay calm under provocation, you've already mastered half of politics, business, and human behavior. Every insult becomes data. Every betrayal becomes insight. Every whisper becomes a test of composure. You turn their hatred into your discipline. You stop letting emotion steer you and start using it as fuel. This is why Machiavellian destruction is not about vengeance. It's about alchemy. You turn their chaos into your calm. Their noise becomes your focus. Their obsession becomes your elevation. And the beauty of it? You don't need an audience to win. The world eventually catches up. It always does. Because truth reveals itself over time, and consistency is the sharpest sword. When people look back, they'll see it clearly. The one who kept their composure outlasted the one who kept talking. That's what real dominance looks like. It's not about how loudly you roar in the moment. It's about how long your silence echoes after the moment has passed. You'll know you've reached this level when your peace becomes unnerving to others. When people try to provoke you just to see if you'll react and you don't. When their voices rise and yours stays level. When they expect fire and you respond with stillness. That's when the shift happens. You're no longer playing defense. You are the terrain. From that point on, you don't need to fight battles. You own frames. And once you own the frame, the war is already over. Because power is perception. And perception follows presence. If your presence is steady, grounded, and impossible to shake, people instinctively align with you. Even those who once opposed you. They begin to mirror your composure, respect your distance, and value your restraint. The ones who mocked your silence will start to envy it, and those who tried to destroy you, they'll destroy themselves trying to understand how you survived them without ever striking back. That's the essence of Machiavellian destruction: precision without noise, dominance without display, power without movement. You become untouchable not because you fought harder, but because you outgrew the battlefield entirely. And when you finally walk away quietly, gracefully, confidently, the message is clear. You were never competing. You were never reacting. You were never defending. You were evolving. And the world takes note. The enemy fades into irrelevance. The room gets quieter. Your name carries a new weight. Not because you demanded respect, but because you proved you didn't need it. That's the moment when Machiavelli's philosophy completes itself. The true ruler doesn't need to punish. Their absence is punishment enough. So, when someone disrespects you, slanders you, or tries to pull you into chaos, remember this: you don't destroy them with rage. You destroy them with silence. You don't fight for validation. You let their own need for it eat them alive. And you don't prove your strength through aggression. You prove it through composure so unshakable that no one can touch it. Because in the end, the strongest kind of power is not what people see. It's what they feel when you walk into a room. That weight, that calm, that quiet certainty. It's the sound of someone who doesn't need to fight anymore. That is the Machiavellian way. Not fire. Not fury, not revenge, just silence, deliberate, dominant, final.